Welcome to Divorce Dialogues. I'm Catherine Miller. Divorce Dialogues brings expert guests to the airwaves to talk through your divorce questions and fill in the gray areas about separating. From thinking about divorce to how to behave during divorce to what to do after, this is Divorce Dialogue.
Welcome to Divorce Dialogues. I'm Catherine Miller. I'm the founder of the Miller Law Group and a trainer at the Center for Understanding and Conflict, and I am on a mission to change how people divorce and help them divorce with dignity. And my guest today is Melissa Murphy Pavone. She's a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst who brings over 18 years of experience helping clients navigate their financial futures through life's most challenging transitions. After building her expertise at firms like Northwestern Mutual, UBS, and Oppenheimer, Melissa founded Mindful Divorce Partners, where she combines her financial acumen with a deeply personal approach to guide clients through divorce and beyond, always emphasizing proactive planning over reactive decisions. I love that so much because, Melissa, that is something I'm always saying to people is you want to get in front of this negotiation, not behind it. And that really is part of our real, I think, negotiation strategy so that we can frame the conversation. So I want to talk more about that. Before I do that, though, I want to talk about this deeply personal approach. What was it, Melissa Pavone, that led you to be interested in working in this area after all of the experience that you have?
Yeah, I always say my why is my mom. I was a child of divorce, and my mom made decisions with her heart and not her head. And as I was going through the financial planning process, I took a really deep dive into holistic financial planning and obtained my CFP to become a certified financial planner. And I felt there was not enough information or guidance for those going through divorce. And so I wanted to dig deeper. And so I started to study for the certified divorce financial analyst. And there's just so many, there's like a new set of rules, right, for going through divorce. The normal rules don't apply anymore. And even if you have a financial advisor or financial planner together, you're now navigating this brand new process. So I really wanted to dig deeper so I could provide my clients with the best advice and more expertise in the area. But also because my mom made decisions with her heart and not her head, it impacted her future. And I go back to that I want others to have a financial ally there to make sure that they're using their heart and their head. And it's all not numbers, and I definitely bring empathy to the situation. But when you're in the throes of divorce, it's so emotionally draining and you're so spent that sometimes you just want out. And you don't think how these decisions can impact you 5, 10, 20 years down the line. And so I really just want to be that financial ally for my clients and all people going through a divorce, that I can just shed some light, right? Shine some light and say, okay, you might want to do this right now. And that's what this is, like the now, but I want to look at you in the future, 10 years from now, how this impacts it. And I
Yeah,
think that's really important.
yeah. Let's back up for a minute because a minute or two ago, you said something that our listeners might really be interested in. You said the normal rules don't apply anymore. What did you mean by that?
So now you're for however long, right? You've been married, you're saving together. You're filing tax returns together. You have this savings rate, this emergency fund together. You have shared expenses. Now, like, we throw that all out the window, right? Now we're doing income, one income. If there is, maintenance or alimony, it's for a set number of years. We don't have the shared retirement anymore. And sometimes, there's one that carries the health insurance, right? There's one person that has the pension and the other person, might have the IRA or might have the other investments. But now we're taking all these things that were once shared and we're dividing them. And we're not necessarily dividing them in half, but we're splitting the pot, and now the expenses go up because now we have two residents, right? We need two sets of sheets. When there's kids, I always say, like, whatever the cost is, add it's double, and sometimes it's more than double because we have two houses and we have two sets of sheets and we need two bottles of ketchup. And as silly as that sounds, we need each person needs that. So these shared expenses go up, and that's not something that everyone takes into consideration because your expenses and your cash flow now are not going to be the same as when you're divorced. And I really take that deep dive, and it takes a little bit more time. But the reason why is because I want to be proactive. I don't want the clients to come back and say, "Hey, we didn't account for this. Hey, I'm not meeting my bills because of X, Y, and Z." And so we really have to go through. And it's one of those things where, okay, we have the electric, right? We have the heat, we have the cable, we kind of do all those. But what happens if the burner goes? What happens if we need a new roof? It's those big expenses that are not kind of on our annual, cash flow or budget per se, that really can throw a wrench into someone's financial plan. And to make sure that each person now has an emergency fund post divorce is really important.
Yeah, I can imagine that the listeners could be panicking. The
Don't
reason that I
panic.
say
We're here
that,
for you.
right, well, exactly, is that I think that divorce is really overwhelming, period. It's emotionally overwhelming, right? Of course, you are redefining who you are in the world, whether or not you wanted the divorce or didn't want it. So there's all that emotional stuff. And then I think a lot of people feel really flooded with the emotions that come with that change and that transition, and then really fully panicked by having to reform their financial plan. So, which I think you're saying is that when we were together as a family unit, you did that and I did this, right? I took care of these things, you took care of those things. And that could be just in terms of emptying the dishwasher and getting the kids to school, but it's also about making sure that we have a financial plan that works, right? I work and I have a great pension, but you are bringing a lot, paying more of the bills, or something like that, right? And I think, and that as we take that apart, and we're now saying this isn't going to be a shared financial picture anymore. It's going to be two individual pictures, and maybe each one looks like a mini, like a mirror image of the other, but probably not because I'm still have what I have and you still have what you have going forward. So we need to figure out a plan that works for the future that takes into account all those things you're talking about, paying the bills, what it costs, making sure we understand that, but also building in the possibility for massive repairs or something like that. Is that right?
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of that, but just peeling back the layers of the onion and really taking that deep dive. And sometimes, like you said, they're very caught up in the emotions that it's hard to think clearly and to see the numbers. And oftentimes people forget the tax consequences too of their decisions. So that's where I spend a lot of my time going over the settlement options and just really explaining and educating to make sure that everyone understands what they're signing and how this will impact their future.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice. And when you're working with someone who has complex financial assets, someone of relatively high net worth who might have incentive compensation or private equity investments, like, Melissa, how do you think about those? Because that's not just basically a pension and a house. Like that's complicated.
Yeah, it can get really complicated. And sometimes that's where are not always so fair. But I am the first to admit when things are over my, pay grade, we bring in other professionals. Sometimes we need forensic accountants to come in and to kind of look at that and do a business valuation or see what the present value of these are. And I think the beauty of divorce is that you get to design it now, right? Like it's not, you get to choose if, your private equity position or your stock options are not something that you want to give up or split because of a future, you know, problem or a future potential cash flow situation, that we can divide things up differently and come up with a creative solution to find, the present value of those assets, but maybe we can barter and see what's important to the other person. So I always say when I meet with clients is you really want to know what your priorities are. And then you want to know what your spouse's priorities are because they might be different. One person might really want to keep that house. The other person might be like, do not touch my pension. One person might really I want Thanksgiving every single year, and the other person might say, like, I want 2 weeks in the summer vacation. So it's not always monetarily, but you want to know what your priorities are and what your spouse's priorities are. And then we can divide it and design it what works best for you and your family to make sure that it's fair, but make sure that everybody's needs are being met. Because especially when there's children involved, nobody wants to screw the other person, right? Or you hope not. You really want everyone to be okay because you want the kids to be okay. And so the kids need two sets of parents that have, a fresh start and that could manage going forward.
I'm Catherine Miller, and you're listening to Divorce Dialogues, a podcast dedicated to educating people about divorce-related topics so everyone can divorce with dignity. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts to be sure that you don't miss an episode. And I am talking today with Melissa Murphy Pavone about divorce finances and what it takes to get through to a fair and sustainable result, really. And, Melissa, as I'm hearing you talk about what different priorities and different, basically, risk tolerances, right? So, to go back to what you said a few minutes ago about putting together a plan that works for each person, a couple will build in a level of risk to their investment scheme, their financial plan. And one person might be like, yeah, let's just go the lottery ticket route. And another person's like, no, let's put it all in real estate or bury it in the mattress. And I think what you're saying is that okay, so then the person who wants to bury their cash in a mattress, which is not a good idea, I think, is that you would probably agree as a financial planner. But anyway, that person doesn't have to take private equity that, might or might not pay off. And the person who wants to look for the lottery ticket in the investments doesn't have to be stuck with the cash in the mattress. And so really, once you understand what everybody's priorities are, you can work out a financial and a parenting plan and really the whole thing that makes sense for each person and makes each person as happy as they possibly can be. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think it's very important once the divorce is over to work with your own financial planner. And sometimes it could be the same person, or sometimes you want a new financial planner, depending upon, the relationship, but to really help with that post-divorce transition, because now you have to start saving for you. You have to start contributing to your retirement and you have to start bridging that gap because oftentimes the alimony, maintenance, child support are sometimes even health insurance is not going to get you to, depending upon what age you divorce at. So it's really important to have that person there to be that hand holding and be that financial ally to make sure your new normal is the best for you and suitable, like you said, within your own risk tolerance, because now we're planning for one.
I know that you're involved with the Long Island Collaborative Divorce Professionals Group, and so let's turn our conversation a little bit to the how of divorce, right? I always say to people that perhaps the most important decision that a divorcing person makes at the beginning of the process is not what lawyer they hire or anything like that. It's really how they choose to make the decisions that they're going to make in the divorce process. So talk to us a little bit about what collaborative is and what the benefits are in your observation as a financial planner.
Yeah, I really enjoy collaborative, and I don't think it is as well known as I wish it was. But in collaborative, I always refer to it as kind of the hybrid. Everyone knows sort of mediation, right? That's like a household name. You have a mediator, you have one person, you guys kind of know what you want. Do not want to go the expensive route. Mediation is known to save time and money and have a neutral third party help, you know, kind of divvy it up. And then we have the litigation route where we try to hire, the biggest, baddest shark in town and try to take everything. And oftentimes the lawyer wins there, right? Because it is very litigious and not so amicable and costs a lot of money. And collaborative is, I refer to it as like the happy medium, where each spouse gets their own collaboratively trained attorney. So you have somebody in your corner that knows what you want and kind of rooting for you. And then there is a financial neutral. And then there's also a parenting specialist or mental health professional as the facilitator. And so all four professionals are collaboratively trained, and we all agree, the six individuals, that we're not going to threaten to go to court. We're going to be respectful, and we're going to do this in the best manner for the family. And it gives them a layer of privacy because we're not going to court. We're not going to, kind of blast this, leak any information about the financials or whatnot. And so we can keep it close to home, but we can craft what's best for the family. And collaborative gives you that space by still feeling supported by a attorney.
Yeah. I see here that you are a mother of two.
I am.
And I think it's really important to recognize that as professionals, we bring our personal selves into our work. I mean, we just can't help it. It's who we are, right? You're a mom and you can't not be a mom when you go to work. And so, how does that personal experience inform your work to helping parents navigate, and particularly with regard to the collaborative model?
Yeah, like you said, you can't turn off being a mom. That's just part of who we are, right? And so divorce is really difficult. And I think collaborative offers that ability to be collaborative, right? To be amicable, to be respectful. And we put the children, when there's children involved, at the priority. We make sure that the parenting plan is for everybody, is best for everybody. And I think that's really important because it doesn't have to be okay every other weekend and Wednesdays for dinner. Like you get the ability to really craft what works best for your family. And sometimes people travel, right? Sometimes people have crazy hours and the shifts are, if you work as a firefighter, a police officer, a hospital, you have different hours. And so we can really craft what works best for the family, putting the children's needs first. And I think that's really important. And by having four individuals that are all collaboratively trained, everyone is thinking of the children. And as a mom, you can't not think of the children, right? Because that's always our top priority. So to make sure that everybody is on the same page is really important.
You went so far as to found your own firm, Mindful Financial Partners. And I'm wondering, when you went to do that, what I mean, I know you're the child of divorce, and maybe this is, part of what it was. And I really heard you when you talked about your mom's experience and really wanting to help people like your mom find a way to integrate like real financial planning with kind of those hard decisions. And so is that what specifically prompted you to include divorce financial planning in the business, or was it something else?
No, it was definitely part of it. I think that the larger firms are much more interested in the assets under management model. And so giving advice for a fee, but with assets. And a lot of times when you're going through a divorce, there's no assets, right? Or there's assets being held up. And divorce takes time. And so being able to consult similar to a lawyer at an hourly fee was not something that the firms really allowed for. And so I really felt firmly about it that I need to help these people. And there's not enough certified divorce financial analysts out there helping. And I'm a big proponent of building your team. I always think that there needs to be a coach for the emotional end of it, or a mental health professional, a CDFA to help with the finances, and then a lawyer and a mediator in order to follow through. And together we all can help that person and design the best divorce for them.
Talk a little bit about the difference between the fee for service and the assets under management model so people understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, oftentimes financial advisors, there can be a flat fee financial advisor who just give advice and become a fiduciary. And that is great. And sometimes they don't necessarily have to manage your investments. Sometimes people's investments are tied up in real estate or in their company 401k plan, or they want to just be a do-it-yourself investor and can manage their own money, but they want the advice to make sure they're on the right track. So that is one avenue. The other avenue, which is much more common in the bigger firms and the wirehouses, is assets under management. And so the advisor takes over your assets and has a fee usually between 1 and 2% of your assets annually. And that's how they get paid. And so they're on like a scale of the better you do, the better they do. So everyone kind of has skin in the game. And so the thing is that if you can choose, some firms just do one, some choose to do the other. When I crafted my firm, I wanted the ability to do both. And I give the client the option because I want them to know what's best for them. Oftentimes we have young people starting out that are getting married that can't afford the monthly fee for a financial planner. It doesn't, their income level doesn't substantiate it. But if they have assets, then I will choose whatever's, best for them, and I can manage their assets and still provide that guidance, knowing that they're in that growth phase. But with the divorce financial planning, there's no there's no obligation to become your financial advisor because I'm acting as a fiduciary, as a financial divorce analyst. So I'm analyzing the data that you originally have now and how it could look in the future for the divorce.
You're listening to Divorce Dialogues, a podcast dedicated to helping people divorce with dignity. And I'm Catherine Miller. Divorce Dialogues has been educating people about divorce and relationship issues for over 10 years. Subscribe to the podcast and don't forget to check out our previous episodes on the podcast website, divorcedialogues.com. And I'm talking today with Melissa Murphy Pavone about financial planning, particularly related to divorce. And Melissa, if people want to learn more about you and how you work and your firm, how can they do that?
Sure, they can visit mindfuldivorcepartners.com. I'm on LinkedIn, and I offer free consultations for anyone that just has some questions. Oftentimes people wonder, can I even afford divorce? What does this look like? I can help people with their financial affidavit and just getting financially organized before they take that next step. Oftentimes during a divorce or mediation, I get brought in just to help kind of craft if they're stuck on one asset or they don't know how to get through the support topic for the cash flow. So I can come and be creative and create a solution and some options that might work well for the couple. And then on the post-divorce side, I help with financial planning for a post-divorce and creating that new normal and helping with the cash flow and all the financial kind of things that you need to do once you're divorced, changing your name and social security and updating your beneficiaries and checking your credit, all of those things that sometimes people don't know what to do after they're getting divorced. And I can really help empower and educate them on how to take hold of their financial future.
That's great information. And, speaking of all of that, when you've been doing this work for a long time, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make during the divorce? And how do you help them avoid that?
One of the biggest happens to be the house. Oftentimes, people always want to keep the family residence. And sometimes they just honestly can't afford it. So I really take the time to look at what this looks like if you were to buy your spouse out. It really makes a difference if the mortgage is assumable, if you have enough income, to kind of warrant to maintain the house, but also like we spoke of earlier, you might be able to afford the mortgage and the taxes and, kind of the bills, but what does that look like when the boiler breaks or when you need to repave the driveway or need a new liner in the pool? All of those things are big ticket items that are not accounted for, so you have to make sure you have the wherewithal, the emergency fund, the cash flow to make sure that you can afford it in the future. And it makes also a difference for the tax consequences, depending upon what the cost basis is on the house and what that looks like when you sell it later, if there's a big gain. So I really take the time to educate everybody. And sometimes you want to keep the house because the kids are still in school. And sometimes there's a nesting situation that can take place, or we can jointly own the home and change the titling, but jointly own it for a set number of times so that the kids can stay in the house until high school, college, and then we sell it. And we can craft the divorce decree that the language is fair and make sure that, it is done correctly.
Is there a regional element to divorce financial planning or financial planning of any kind? I know you're on Long Island. It's expensive on Long Island. It's expensive in Westchester and in New York City too. So it's, life around us is expensive. But what are your thoughts about taking into account regional differences?
Yeah, I think that the cash flow, wherever we are, it's all relative, right? Your income and your how much things cost with inflation, we're all being impacted by it. So I think that it's all relative to where you are. But, New York, Florida, California, they're more expensive states. And the rules are a little different, but the beauty of it is that you really can craft what works best and design it. And like you say,
All
with
right. So,
dignity, right?
yeah, of course.
Instead of just doing what the law says or what you could be entitled to. You never want to judge who's never met you or your children decide your future.
So, as a final question here, because we're almost out of time, you're clearly someone who values your community, your family, and other people's families as well. So how do you help your clients maintain their connection to their community? Because that's what we're just talking about, right? Like being in the community, not feeling like you're losing your life or your lifestyle, but also restructuring your finances as you go through the divorce process.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that support, whether it's friends or family or community. There's charities, there's work, but really having that financial ally and really empowering yourself is important.
Melissa Murphy Pavone, it has been my absolute pleasure to have you as my guest on Divorce Dialogues. It's been a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much.